Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning we will be in Matthew chapter 9, verse 18 through verse 38. As Jesus was saying these things, a ruler came, bowed low before him, and said, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hands on her, and she will live." Jesus and his disciples got up and followed him. But a woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. For she kept saying to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be healed." But when Jesus turned and saw her, he said, "Have courage, daughter, your faith has made you well." And the woman was healed from that hour. When Jesus entered the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the disorderly crowd, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but asleep." And they began making fun of him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and gently took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the news of this spread throughout that region. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, shouting, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he went into the house, the blind men came to him. Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "Let it be done for you according to your faith." And their eyes were opened. Then Jesus sternly warned them, "See that no one knows about this." But they went out and spread the news about him throughout that entire region. As they were going away, a man who could not talk and was demon-possessed was brought to him. After the demon was cast out, the man who had been mute spoke. The crowds were amazed and said, "Never has anything like this been seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "By the ruler of demons he casts out demons." Then Jesus went throughout all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every kind of disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were bewildered and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." So I was just looking, because it started out with, as he was saying these things. And what was he saying again? The Pharisees were questioning him about, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? And why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples don't fast? And then this ruler comes before him. It's translated elsewhere a synagogue chief. Could be just a ruler in general. Let's see what Guzik has to say. A ruler came and worshipped him. Yeah, that's an important thing. This guy comes and worships Jesus, and Jesus doesn't turn him away, but instead receives the worship. So that's significant. This man worshipped him and Jesus received the worship, which would have been blasphemous if Jesus himself had not been God. In other instances in the New Testament where such worship is offered to a human or to an angel, it is always immediately refused. The ruler did the right thing coming to Jesus, but his faith is small in comparison to the centurion of Matthew 8. The ruler thought it is essential that Jesus personally come touch the little girl. While the centurion understood Jesus had the authority to heal with a word, even at a great distance. And suddenly a woman, Mark and Luke give a much fuller account of this miracle, but Matthew's account is enough to show the compassion of Jesus and the fact that his power was not magical. Here we simply see the power of God responding to the faith of those who seek him. Matthew relates this story shortly, as he does many others, being only intent upon recording the miracle. If only I may touch his garment, I shall be made well. Because this woman's condition was embarrassing, and because she was ceremonially unclean, and would be condemned for touching Jesus or even being in a pressing crowd, she wanted to do this secretly. She would not openly ask Jesus to be healed, but she thought, if only I may touch his garment, I shall be made well. These fringes were 4 tassels of hyacinth blue, worn by a Jew on the corners of his outer garment. It was meant to identify a Jew as a Jew, and a member of the chosen people, no matter where he was. And it was meant to remind a Jew every time he put on and took off his clothes that he belonged to God. This also shows us that Jesus dressed like other people of his time. He felt no need to distinguish himself by the clothes he wore. In dress, Jesus was not nonconformist. To the best of our knowledge, there was no promise or pattern that touching the garment of Jesus would bring healing. It seems that the woman believed that this in a somewhat superstitious way. Yet even though her faith had elements of error and superstition, she believed in the healing power of Jesus, and his garment served as a point of contact for that faith. There are many things we could find wrong with the woman's faith, yet her faith was in Jesus, and the object of faith is much more important than the quality or even quantity of faith. Her faith, though imperfect, was enough to receive what Jesus wanted to give her. Her 12-year disease was immediately cured. When he saw her, he said, this woman hoped to receive something from Jesus without drawing any attention to herself or her embarrassing problem. Jesus insisted on making public notice of her, and he did this for good reasons. He did it so she would know that she was healed, having heard an official declaration of it from Jesus. He did it so others would know she was healed, because her ailment was private in nature. He did it so she would know why she was healed, that it was by her faith and not because of a superstitious touch in and of itself. He did it so that she would not think she had stolen a blessing from Jesus, and so she would never feel that she needed to hide from him. He did it so that the ruler of the synagogue would see the power of Jesus at work, and therefore have more faith himself for his ill daughter. He did it so that he could bless her in a special way, giving her an honored title that we never see Jesus give to any other daughter. Interesting. The flute players in the noisy crowd in the ruler's home. These were probably paid mourners who, in the custom of the day, offered an ostentatious display of mourning for a price, and not out of sincere sorrow. When we notice how quickly they moved from wailing to ridiculing Jesus, it showed their lack of sincerity. Professional mourners were hired even by the poorest families. From Mishnah Ketaboth 4:4 specifies not less than 2 flutes and 1 wailing woman. Mourning, like everything else, had been reduced to a system. 2 flutes and 1 mourning woman at the burial of a wife, incumbent on the poorest man. Jesus endured the scorn from the crowd and raised the girl to life. He certainly would not let the criticism or mocking of the crowd keep him from doing God's will. It's interesting, too, that he says that she was just asleep. I'm sure that provided a convenient excuse for people who didn't want to believe what Jesus did there. 2 blind men followed him. It was not easy for these blind men to follow Jesus, but they did. They had to ask others where Jesus was going, and they had to listen to every sound that might guide them. Yet they were determined to follow him to the best of their ability. Blindness was a distressingly common disease in Palestine. It came partly from the glare of the eastern sun on unprotected eyes, and partly because people knew nothing of the importance of cleanliness and hygiene. In particular, the clouds of unclean flies carried infections which led to loss of sight. Spurgeon. Their sole appeal was to mercy. There was no talk about merit, no pleading of their past sufferings, or their persevering endeavors, or their resolves for the future, but have mercy on us. He will never win a blessing from God who demands it as if he had a right to it. Yeah. And certainly that's how we all come to Jesus, not on any merit of our own, but pleading mercy like these blind men did. This is the first time Jesus is called Son of David, and there can be no doubt that the blind men were confessing Jesus as Messiah. John 9:22 tells us that the Pharisees judged that anyone who proclaimed Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah, would be removed from the synagogue. Though the occasion in John seems to have been after this healing of the blind men, we can still believe that there was a price to pay for calling Jesus Son of David. Yeah. These instances of reaching out to Jesus were sometimes costly for people, meaning a separation from their community. When he had come into the house, the blind men came to him. Jesus did not deal with the blind men until they were indoors. This may have been to dampen messianic expectations on a day marked by 2 highly public and dramatic miracles. Do you believe that I am able to do this? Again, Jesus healed the blind men in response to their faith. Faith does not guarantee healing for every individual, yet there are undoubtedly multitudes that are not healed because they lack faith. These men simply proclaimed their faith by saying, "Yes, Lord." According to your faith, let it be so to you. Here again, Matthew emphasized the proper faith that men should have in Jesus, and the blessings that come to men through that faith. Yeah, I'm reminded of Hebrews that we must believe that Jesus is, and that he can do what he says he can do. A mute man, demon-possessed. In the Jewish understanding of demon possession, this man could not be helped. This was because most rabbis of that day thought that the essential first step in exorcism was to compel or trick the demon into telling you its name. The name was then thought of as a handle by which the demon could be removed. Therefore, a demon that made a man mute had clearly prevented the revelation of the name of the demon inhabiting that victim, and therefore prevented the exorcism. Yet Jesus had no problem. The demon was cast out, and the mute spoke. For these reasons, this miracle was particularly amazing to the multitudes. It showed not only the complete authority of Jesus over the demonic realm, but also the weakness of the rabbis' traditions. But the Pharisees said he casts out demons by the ruler of the demons. In attributing this work of Jesus to the power of Satan, we see in the Gospel the Pharisees and other religious leaders continuing their rejection of Jesus and his work, and maligning the work of the Spirit as the work of the devil. Nothing was too bad for them to say of Jesus. Surely this was going very near to the unpardonable sin, says Spurgeon. Jesus went about all the cities and villages. As Jesus encountered the depth of human need, he was moved with compassion for them. Jesus was not unfeeling or stoic in the face of people and their problems. In the previous verse, says, Jesus was terribly and unfairly criticized, yet it did not make him stop his work. He didn't say, "Oh, they are saying terrible things about me. What can I do? How can I make them stop?" Jesus simply ignored terrible and unfair criticism and got about his Father's business. Yeah. And I think that's key in doing the work of God and not doing the work of the flesh, is acknowledging our position in Christ and going about our day based on that. So, they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Jesus here described what man is apart from God, that we are like sheep having no shepherd. This means that we are in a lot of trouble until we come under the care of our shepherd. Sadly, one could say that the Jewish people of that day did indeed have some kind of spiritual guides and shepherds, namely the scribes, priests, Levites, and Pharisees. Yet for the most part they were worthless. Christ accounts those people to have no ministers who have no good ones. Yeah. Reminded of Jeremiah, where on the contrary of doing good and even doing nothing, the shepherds of Jeremiah's day were actively destroying the flock. That is, woe to the shepherds who are consuming the flock, essentially. The harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. We are to pray that the Lord would send out laborers. Now the Greek is much more forcible. It is that he would push them forward and thrust them out. It is the same word which is used for the expulsion of a devil from a man possessed. It takes great power to drive a devil out. It will need equal power from God to drive a minister out to his work. This is a prayer we must pray, but we can only pray it honestly if we pray with an ear open to hearing him tell us, "You go into the harvest." Yeah. Ray Comfort also talks about that verse in particular, how it's a difficult one to pray if you aren't engaged in evangelism type thing. Carrying on, Psalm 11, verses 1 through 7. In the Lord I have taken shelter. How can you say to me, "Flee to a mountain like a bird"? For look, the wicked prepare their bows, they put their arrows on the strings, to shoot in the darkness at the morally upright. When the foundations are destroyed, what can the godly accomplish? The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes watch. His eyes examine all people. The Lord approves of the godly, but he hates the wicked and those who love to do violence. May the Lord rain down burning coals and brimstone on the wicked. A whirlwind is what they deserve. Certainly the Lord is just. He rewards godly deeds. The upright will experience his favor. In the Lord I put my trust. In the years before he took the throne of Israel, David lived the life of a fugitive, who was constantly hunted by King Saul and lived in constant danger. In such a time his friends advised him, "Flee as a bird to your mountain." His friends meant well, but David knew it was the wrong thing to do. How can you say, "Flee as a bird to your mountain"? This expressed the near outrage in David's response to his friends. No matter how well-intentioned his friends were, they gave him the advice of fear. The advice of fear couldn't stand with the position of trust David had in the Lord. He would rather dare the danger than exhibit a distrust in the Lord his God. For look, the advice given to David was well meant, but ungodly. It was like when Peter advised Jesus not to go the way of the cross. Peter meant well, but he was really being used by the devil. We must always be careful with the advice we give to others. First, we must always mind our own business and not be busybodies. Second, we can be too confident in our own perception of a situation. Job's friends confidently said, "I will tell you, hear me, what I have seen, I will declare." But he was wrong. Our motive is good and right, but the advice is wrong. That they may shoot secretly up at the upright in heart. Here, David's friends are trying to make him afraid of a secret attack. When we fear the thing we can't see, we are really walking in fear. Yeah. The Lord's throne is in heaven. This was the source of David's confidence. It was not foolhardiness or self-reliance. Instead, David had confidence in a holy, all-powerful, all-knowing God. David was asked, "What can the righteous do?" David answered with another question, "What can't the righteous do when the Lord God is still on his throne?" Yeah. His eyes behold. David didn't need to take the advice of fear, because God saw his situation. David had a greater cause than self-preservation, because he knew that God was looking at him and taking care of him. For the Lord is righteous. This was a comfort and encouragement to David. When we are rebelling against the Lord, his righteousness is no comfort to us. But David knew he was an innocent victim of persecution, and he knew the righteous Lord would take up his cause. His countenance beholds the upright. Scholars and translators debate if this means God's upright people see him, or the Lord sees his upright people. Most modern translations think it speaks of God's people seeing him. However, it really doesn't matter because both are true. Carrying on, Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 through 12. My child, do not despise discipline from the Lord, and do not loathe his rebuke. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, just as a father disciplines the son in whom he delights. Yeah. If we are ambivalent towards our children and let them run amok and behave like monsters, it shows no care or concern for their future or even for their present. Yeah, so in our modern age, it's just like rebuke and discipline are pretty well considered to be the most hateful thing that you can do to a person. How backwards. Anywho, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.